In the year 3000 BCE, Earth was a world filled with brilliance and promise. Humanity stood at the peak of its civilization with cities that stretched across continents. Their technology advanced beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, yet their greatness was a threat to the universe at large. The Galactic Council, a conglomeration of alien races united under one banner, had long watched humanity from the shadows and deemed them a danger to the balance they had so carefully cultivated. The Vorelian Empire led the council, and their vast fleet of warships ruled the stars with an iron fist. They believed that Earth was an uncontained spark of potential that could disrupt the cosmic order they had established, and so they decided it must be extinguished, but they needed to make sure humanity never rose again, and so they devised a plan that would ensure their dominance for millennia. The humans of Earth were unaware of the looming threat. They had no idea that the very stars above them had already decided their fate. The Galactic Council watched in silence as the human race continued to grow bolder and more ambitious with each passing year. They explored the far reaches of their solar system and sent probes to distant stars, unaware of the judgment that was being cast upon them. Then came the betrayal from within. One of Earth's most influential leaders, a man who had once advocated for peace and diplomacy, turned against his own people in exchange for power and security with the Council. His allegiance was forged in secret behind closed doors, and within hidden chambers he worked tirelessly to ensure humanity's downfall, to secure the ultimate weapon that would ensure the obliteration of their world. The Vorelians had developed a weapon unlike any other, a massive orbital annihilator that would turn Earth into nothing more than cosmic dust. The weapon was activated, and humanity's last hope was crushed in an instant. Cities burned beneath the heat of the weapon's firepower, the oceans boiled away into vapor, and the very land itself fractured under the brutal force of the destruction. The betrayer watched as his home planet was reduced to ashes in a single terrible moment of finality. He had succeeded in his mission, but in the process he sealed his own fate. The very people he had once called his own were gone, wiped from existence. No trace was left of the thriving civilizations that had once graced Earth. As the dust settled across the lifeless world, the Vorelian fleet withdrew into the darkness of space. Believing their work was complete, they turned their attention elsewhere, convinced that the human race was no more and that their empire would stand forever unchallenged. But they had missed something. In the chaos of Earth's final moments, a small fleet of ships had escaped the devastation, carrying the last remnants of humanity. Those who had managed to escape before the weapon struck, they fled into the unknown, carrying with them the knowledge of Earth and the burning desire for vengeance. Among them was a child born in the last days of the old world, a survivor hidden away in the aftermath of the destruction. The child would grow up not knowing the history of their ancestors, nor the tragedy that had unfolded, but the echoes of humanity's past would one day catch up with them, and the time for vengeance would come. 3,000 years had passed since the fall of Earth, and the last of humanity's ancient home was nothing but a myth lost in the distant corridors of time. The descendants of those who had escaped had long since forgotten the story of their origins, living now on a distant world far from the galaxy's bustling center. This new world had been a haven for humanity, a place to rebuild, but with each passing generation, the memory of Earth faded into nothing more than a whisper in the wind. The planet they called home was called Terra Prime, a lush world rich in resources and teeming with life. It was a place of relative peace and prosperity, where humans had lived in harmony with their alien neighbors. For centuries, the descendants of Earth had adapted to their new environment, developing new technologies and ways of life, but their true legacy remained hidden beneath the surface. Among these people was Lyra, a young historian with a deep curiosity about her world and its past. She had always felt something was missing, an unshakable sense that there was more to her people's history than they had been told. It wasn't until she stumbled upon a hidden underground vault in the ruins of an ancient city that the truth began to reveal itself. The vault had been sealed for millennia, its entrance guarded by alien symbols and cryptic codes, but with her keen intellect and knowledge of forgotten languages, Lyra was able to unlock its secrets inside. She found records of human history, long-buried documents, recordings, and holograms of a time before Terra Prime, a time when humans had ruled a planet called Earth. As Lyra pored over the data, she uncovered the truth about the Galactic Council and its ruthless decision to eradicate Earth's population. Her heart raced with every word she read. Earth had been destroyed in a single cataclysmic event by the very beings they now called allies. The Council had seen humanity as a threat too powerful to exist and had eliminated them with a weapon of unimaginable destruction. But even more shocking was what Lyra learned about herself. Hidden within the data was a family tree that stretched back thousands of years, and it led directly to her. She was not just another descendant of Earth's survivors. She was the heir to a long-lost bloodline, the last of a royal family that had once ruled over the planet, a family that had been targeted for extermination by the Council itself. Lyra's mind spun as the weight of this revelation settled upon her. She had never known the truth about her lineage or the history of her ancestors. All she had ever known was the life she had led on Terra Prime, a simple life as an historian, yet here she was holding in her hands the key to a past long buried. Her thoughts turned to the destruction of Earth, the vengeance that had been denied to her ancestors, and to the bitter realization that her people had been wiped from existence without ever having a chance to fight back. Lyra's heart burned with a new fire, the fire of anger and the desire for retribution. With her newfound knowledge, she knew what she had to do. Lyra would gather a team of like-minded individuals from across Terra Prime, those who could help her in a mission that had been 3,000 years in the making, to avenge Earth and to bring the full weight of humanity's wrath upon the Galactic Council for what they had done. And so, with the echoes of the past guiding her steps, Lyra set her plan into motion. Lyra's discovery set the gears of destiny in motion. With the weight of Earth's destruction burning in her heart, she knew she couldn't stand idly by while the Council continued to thrive in its arrogant belief that humanity was gone forever. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed allies, people who shared her drive, who understood the depth of the stakes, and who were willing to risk everything to take vengeance on the beings responsible for erasing their ancestors from history. Her first recruit was Kale, a former soldier who had grown disillusioned with the fragile peace between the humans of Terra Prime and their alien neighbors. He had spent his youth in the military, training in the harshest conditions, and his skills were unmatched in hand-to-hand combat and tactical warfare. He had long sensed that something was off about the Council, that their promises of peace were just another form of control. Lyra's words resonated with him like a fire rekindled from embers, and without hesitation, he swore his loyalty to her cause. Next was Dr. Maris, a scientist who had once worked on classified projects designed to harness the energy of dying stars. She had uncovered strange anomalies in her research, hints of technologies far beyond anything humanity had ever known. She, too, had felt something was missing, a deeper truth buried beneath the surface of their world. When Lyra approached her with the story of Earth's destruction, Maris had no trouble believing it. The technology they had uncovered, the buried archives, all pointed to the very same threat. She knew that the weapons the Council had used to destroy Earth had left their fingerprints across the galaxy, and that humanity was the only species capable of understanding how to fight back. The trio, Kale, Maris, and Lyra, began their work in secret, assembling a team of elite operatives, engineers, and hackers from across Terra Prime. The first phase of their mission was clear: infiltrate Council-controlled territories and retrieve anything that might give them an edge. Every bit of intelligence they could gather would be critical to their success. They built a network of informants, evading Council surveillance and making contact with alien races who had once been subjugated by the Council's forces. It was a delicate operation, but every step brought them closer to their goal. As they worked, they also began reconstructing the ancient technologies hidden within the vaults of Earth's long-lost archives. Maris, using her scientific expertise, began to reverse engineer the weapons that had been left behind, energy-based weaponry that could decimate entire fleets. Kale, on the other hand, trained the team in combat, turning ordinary citizens into elite warriors. He taught them the art of guerrilla warfare, knowing that humanity's greatest advantage was its ability to adapt, to surprise, and to strike without warning. But Lyra's true challenge was the one she couldn't train or plan for, the emotional toll it took on her as she watched her people become more and more obsessed with vengeance. Some of her allies became consumed by the desire to destroy, losing sight of the future they were supposed to be fighting for. Lyra had to constantly remind them that the goal wasn't just to exact revenge. It was to build something new, to create a future where humanity could stand strong once again. With every passing day, the rebellion grew stronger. They launched small, surgical strikes against Council outposts, gathering crucial resources and sowing discord among the alien races who had once blindly followed the Council's commands. They were sending a message. Humanity was back, and they would stop at nothing to ensure the galaxy knew their name once again. But Lyra's heart knew the truth. This was just the beginning. The real battle would come when they confronted the heart of the Galactic Council. And that, she knew, would require more than just strength. It would require the will of the species that had been buried, but would rise once more to take what was rightfully theirs. The small strikes against Council outposts had caught the attention of the Galactic Council, but not in the way Lyra had hoped. They had expected a few scattered attacks from rogue factions or isolated rebellions, nothing too significant. What they hadn't anticipated was the intensity of the human response, nor the unrelenting fire that burned in Lyra's eyes. Humanity was no longer willing to be a forgotten species. The fires of vengeance had ignited, and the galaxy would soon feel the heat. Lyra knew the rebellion couldn't remain hidden forever. The human attacks were becoming bolder, more coordinated. With each successful raid, the rebellion's reach expanded, pulling in sympathetic alien factions and former allies of the Council who had grown tired of their oppressive rule. The rebellion was no longer just a human cause. It was a fight for the galaxy itself, one where countless oppressed races found their hope reignited in the form of Lyra's war for justice. But the Council had underestimated humanity's ingenuity. As the rebellion grew, so did its strength. They had learned to adapt, harnessing both ancient human technologies and new weapons designed by Maris and the other scientists they had recruited. Energy-based guns, explosive devices capable of piercing even the most fortified alien armor, and stealth tactics perfected by Cal's team made them an unstoppable force. Slowly but surely, they started to take down Council strongholds, disabling their communication systems, disrupting their trade routes, and crippling their fleets. The war spread like wildfire, engulfing star systems once thought untouchable. The rebellion was no longer a small band of outcasts. It was a full-fledged insurgency, one that had earned the respect and fear of the entire galaxy. Lyra's name became a symbol of defiance, a rallying cry for those who had long suffered under the Council's rule. But with every victory, the stakes grew higher. The Council was no longer simply fighting to maintain order, it was fighting to survive. In the heart of the Galactic Council, panic began to set in. For the first time in centuries, the once dominant Council was losing control. They had underestimated the tenacity of humanity, the sheer willpower that burned in the hearts of those who had lost everything. The Vorelian Empire, the largest and most powerful faction within the Council, took drastic measures to quell the growing rebellion. They activated their most powerful weapon, a doomsday device capable of destroying entire star systems, a weapon designed specifically for the event of a human resurgence. But even with this weapon at their disposal, the Council found themselves trapped in a precarious position. The rebellion had become too widespread, too organized. The resistance forces had struck at the very core of the Council's infrastructure, damaging their communication networks and leaving them fragmented. A growing number of Council members were beginning to turn against each other, suspicion and fear spreading like a disease. Lyra's rebellion had not only shattered their power, it was starting to tear the Council apart from within. As the Council scrambled to hold their empire together, Lyra saw her chance. She knew the time had come to escalate their efforts. The rebellion needed to hit the heart of the Galactic Council, the Vorelian capital itself. The Council had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated not only humanity's strength, but their ability to strike where it hurt the most. Lyra's plan was set into motion, a full-scale assault on the Vorelian homeworld, with all their might concentrated on one final blow. The rebellion's forces, now united and stronger than ever, prepared for a battle that would echo through the stars. They were no longer a forgotten species. They were the storm that would tear the council apart. But as the final strike was being planned, an unexpected twist came. One of Lyra's trusted allies, an operative who had been part of the rebellion from the beginning, disappeared without a trace. They had given no warning, left no message. Only the cold certainty that something was terribly wrong. The rebellion's own ranks had been infiltrated. The council wasn't the only one with spies. The disappearance of the operative sent ripples through the rebellion, a cold shiver of doubt running through the ranks. Lyra had never trusted easily, but she had built a team around shared loyalty and a common cause. The loss of one of her closest allies, someone who had helped orchestrate several key missions, was more than just a tactical setback. It was a gut punch to the morale of the entire rebellion. She couldn't shake the feeling that something far more dangerous was at play. She called an emergency council of her inner circle, Kale, Maris, and the top commanders who had led the rebellion's most crucial raids. As they sat in the darkened war room, tension hung heavy in the air. Kale's expression was grim, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I don't like this," Kale said, his voice low but fierce. "We've been too successful. The council's been reeling, and they would do anything to find a weakness in us. Someone inside our ranks could be feeding them information." Maris, who had been meticulously analyzing the data they'd collected from recent raids, nodded in agreement. "It's possible. We've seen no signs of a major leak, but that doesn't mean one hasn't been carefully planted. The council has spies everywhere. They've been waiting for this moment, waiting for us to get too confident." Lyra stood up, pacing as she processed the information. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Who could it be? Was it someone they had trusted for years? Someone so close to the core of the rebellion that they could derail everything with a single betrayal? "This cannot go on," Lyra declared, her voice steely. "We have to root out this traitor before the Vorelians find us. If we allow this to continue, the whole rebellion is at risk. We cannot afford that, not when we're this close." Kale's eyes narrowed. "We don't have time for a full investigation. We need to act fast. Whoever this is, they know too much. They could be leading the council straight to us, and if they have access to the command structure, they could destroy everything we've worked for." Lyra clenched her fists, the weight of the decision bearing down on her. "We move fast, but we move smart. I want everyone on high alert. Tighten communications, lock down any sensitive information. And Kale, I need you to handle this personally. Find out who did this." Kale nodded sharply. "Understood." As the meeting disbanded, Lyra's thoughts turned inward. She had built this rebellion from the ground up, made it into a force capable of standing against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever seen. Yet now, the greatest threat came not from their enemies, but from within. This treachery, this betrayal, felt personal. They weren't just fighting to avenge Earth anymore. They were fighting to save their future from the very people who had been working beside them. Meanwhile, Kale set out to carry out his mission. His instincts told him that the traitor wasn't some low-ranking officer, someone easily replaceable. No, the traitor was far more dangerous. Someone with influence, someone who had worked their way into Lyra's inner circle, someone who had access to her most sensitive plans. The investigation was tense, marked by distrust and suspicion. Every person was a potential mole, and every conversation had to be analyzed for clues. But Cal's sharp instincts led him to something that stood out: subtle inconsistencies, slight lapses in behavior, and a certain member of the command staff who seemed too eager to please. As Kale dug deeper, the truth began to surface like a dark shadow. The traitor was one of Lyra's most trusted allies, someone who had been with her from the beginning, someone she had never suspected. The truth cut through her like a blade. She had to act quickly, but the consequences of exposing the traitor were dire. A breach in trust this deep could fracture the rebellion irreparably, and yet the time had come. The battle for humanity's future had just gotten even more complicated. The Council had allies inside their ranks, but Lyra would not let them destroy everything she had built. Her resolve hardened. The traitor would pay, and the rebellion would rise above the shadows of betrayal. There was no turning back now. Cal's investigation had uncovered the unthinkable. The traitor was none other than Lieutenant Mira, one of Lyra's oldest and most trusted commanders. Mira had been by her side since the early days of the rebellion, leading raids, providing tactical support, and keeping the team grounded when morale faltered. To Lyra, Mira had always been a symbol of loyalty, someone who had seen the depths of Earth's destruction and shared in the thirst for vengeance. It was a bitter revelation, one that gnawed at Lyra's soul. Cale confronted Mira in private, far away from prying eyes. The storm inside him raged, but he kept his expression cold, steady. Mira sat across from him, her face betraying nothing. She had known this moment would come. Mira. Cale began, his voice low. You don't have to deny it. We know what you've been doing. Mira's lips curled into a small, almost pitying smile. I knew you would find out eventually. You're too good at what you do, Cale. But it's too late now. The betrayal in her words cut deeper than anything Cale had anticipated. She had been feeding the Council critical information, allowing them to track the movements of the rebellion. Her subtle sabotage had ensured that some of their most vital missions had failed, and now it seemed she was prepared to vanish into the shadows with her new masters. I didn't have a choice, Mira said, her voice taking on a mournful tone. The Council offered me power. They offered me a chance to bring my family back. I couldn't resist. After all these years of fighting, of losing, they promised me a place by their side, a chance to reshape the galaxy in a way that would never again see humans as expendable. Cal's hand gripped the hilt of his blade, but he held himself back, knowing that killing Mira in this moment would be too easy, too quick. He needed answers. And Earth? What about Earth? Did you forget what they did to it? Did you forget that the Council is the reason we're here, fighting for survival? Mira's eyes flickered with guilt, but she didn't flinch. I haven't forgotten. But power. Power is a stronger motivator than revenge, Cale. Revenge doesn't bring back the people you loved. Power can. I saw the future in the Council's plans. The galaxy is changing, and I want to be on the winning side. Cale's fists clenched. He had seen this before. People who thought they could escape the past by bending to the will of those in power. Mira had chosen her path, and there was no turning back. But Cal would not allow her treachery to go unpunished. You've betrayed not just us, but everything we fought for, Cale said, his voice cold with contempt. You'll answer for this. But before Cale could act, the door to the chamber burst open. Lyra stood at the doorway, her face a mask of calm fury. Her presence in that moment was like a spark to dry tinder. She had known about the betrayal. Of course, Cale had shared the truth with her in hushed tones, but seeing Mira, the traitor who had once been her closest ally, standing before her in such a way stoked the flames of rage in her chest. Mira, Lyra said softly, I trusted you. I believed in you. We all did. Mira's gaze flickered briefly, but she held it steady. You still don't understand, do you? This war, it's bigger than us. You can't win it by holding on to the past. You have to embrace the future, the power that comes with it. Join me, Lyra. You can lead with me. Together, we can reshape the galaxy. Lyra's eyes hardened. I'll never join you. The future you speak of is one of oppression, of betrayal, and of death. You may have sold your soul, Mira, but I haven't, and I never will. In the silence that followed, Lyra made her decision. Take her into custody. We'll deal with this when we have time. Cale nodded, stepping forward to restrain Mira. The look in Mira's eyes was one of defiance, but also of a quiet resignation. She had known this day would come, and she had prepared for it. But even as they led her away, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this betrayal was only the beginning, that the Council had more spies within their ranks. The rebellion's trust had been shattered, and Lyra knew that repairing it would take more than just punishing Mira. The battle for the galaxy was about to become even more dangerous. The stakes had risen, and now, Lyra was more determined than ever to see the Council destroyed. The fight for humanity's vengeance was far from over. The days following Mira's betrayal were marked by a somber mood across the rebellion's ranks. The discovery of the traitor had shaken the foundation of Lyra's command. While Mira was locked away under heavy guard, her actions still loomed large over the rebellion's efforts. Trust had been compromised, and with the looming final assault on the Vorelian capital, Lyra couldn't afford any more distractions. The stakes had never been higher. Kale, ever the strategist, urged Lyra to push forward with the plan. "We can't let this stop us, Lyra. The Council is already reeling. We've struck at their core, and now we need to finish it. If we hesitate, they'll regroup, and all of this will have been for nothing." Lyra nodded, her face hard with determination. She knew Cal was right. The rebellion couldn't afford to falter now. The Vorelian homeworld was within their reach, and the final blow was imminent. But the memories of Mira's betrayal still haunted her. It wasn't just the act of treason. It was the realization that the same blood that had once fought for Earth now turned against them for power. The rebellion's leaders convened in a war room, the tension palpable. Each commander had lost something in this war: family, friends, their homes, and they all carried the weight of Earth's destruction within them. Yet, despite the loss of trust and the betrayal of one of their own, the rebellion had grown stronger. New alliances had formed, and the resistance now included several alien races who had once been subjugated by the Council's empire. They were united by the hope that Lyra's vengeance would bring an end to the oppression they had long suffered. "Every strike we've made against the Council has been a message," Lyra said to the gathered commanders, her voice steady. "But this one will be a reckoning. We're not just avenging Earth anymore. We're freeing the galaxy, and we're taking back what was stolen from us." The commanders nodded in agreement, their faces grim but resolute. They knew that the battle ahead would be unlike any they had faced before. The Vorelian capital, well defended and fortified, would not fall easily. They had prepared for this final push, ensuring that their forces were at full strength. But Lyra understood the cost of war. Victory would come at a price, one that might cost them more than they were willing to pay. As they finalized the battle plans, Lyra's thoughts drifted back to Earth. The memories of her ancestors, the whispers of their lost world, echoed in her mind. She had vowed to avenge them, but now, with the war reaching its peak, she began to question what kind of future humanity could have after the Council's fall. Was the path of vengeance truly the only one forward? Could there ever be peace after such bloodshed? But those thoughts were fleeting. She knew the galaxy was a place of violence, a place where the strong survived. The Council had proven that. They had built an empire on lies, on the obliteration of her people. If she didn't act now, humanity would be nothing more than a forgotten footnote in the galaxy's history. The time for questions had passed. As the rebellion's fleet gathered at the edge of Vorelian space, Lyra's resolve solidified. The final assault was set to begin. She would lead them to victory, no matter the cost. The Council had ruled for far too long, believing their power was unbreakable. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. In the depths of the Vorelian capital, the Council's leaders were preparing their last line of defense, unaware that the storm was about to break. The war and Lyra's vengeance would reach its boiling point. But for Lyra, this fight had become more than just retribution. It had become a fight for humanity's future, and the price of victory would determine whether they could ever truly rise from the ashes of Earth. The final assault had begun. The rebellion's fleet, now a formidable armada, moved toward the heart of the Vorelian Empire. Each ship, each fighter, and every soldier aboard knew the magnitude of the mission ahead. Lyra stood at the helm of the flagship, her eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space. In front of them was the Vorelian capital, an enormous fortress world that had long symbolized the oppression of the galaxy's inhabitants. The time for revenge had arrived, but Lyra knew that the cost would be great. There would be no going back after this. The Vorelians, desperate to maintain their crumbling empire, had activated their final line of defense. a massive planetary shield that rendered the capital nearly impervious to attack. But the rebellion had been preparing for this. Maris and her team of scientists had developed a weapon capable of piercing the shield, a weapon that would turn the tide of battle. Lyra's mind raced as she watched the tactical display, her grip tightening on the control panel. The battle was unfolding across multiple fronts. Hundreds of ships engaged in dogfights with the Vorelian fleet, and ground forces were poised to launch their assault on the planet itself. The stakes had never been higher. Victory meant the destruction of the Council, the liberation of countless oppressed worlds, and the possibility of rebuilding humanity's place in the galaxy. Defeat meant extinction. "We got this, Lyra." Kel's voice came through her comms, his tone reassuring but filled with the weight of the moment. The fleet's holding steady, the shields weakening. Maris is ready with the device. Lyra nodded, her heart heavy. "We have one shot. We can't fail." As the weapon was deployed, the ground shook with the intensity of the blast. The energy beam lanced toward the Vorelian capital, cutting through the shield like a knife through silk. The Vorelian defense system faltered, and a moment later, the weapon's full force breached the planetary shield, shattering the last line of defense. The capital was vulnerable. The final assault began. Lyra's forces surged forward, launching wave after wave of attacks on the enemy's strongholds. The Vorelian fleet, once so powerful, was in disarray, overwhelmed by the relentless onslaught. In the streets below, rebel forces clashed with the Council's loyalists, fighting for control of the capital's vital infrastructure. Lyra led the charge alongside Kale, Maris, and their top commanders, cutting through Vorelian defenses with unmatched precision. Every building they captured, every victory they scored, was a step closer to ending the Council's reign. But deep within the heart of the capital, the Council's leaders were preparing for their last stand. In the inner sanctum of their citadel, the Vorelian High Command was gathered. They knew the rebellion was closing in, and they were prepared to sacrifice everything to keep their hold on power. In a last-ditch effort to destroy the rebellion, they activated their doomsday device, a weapon capable of obliterating the entire planet and anyone standing on it. Lyra received the news just as she reached the entrance to the Council's command center. The countdown had begun. There was no time to waste. "We're not going to let them win, Lyra," Kale said, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to get to the core of their operation now." With no time to waste, Lyra led the charge into the citadel. They fought their way through the corridors, facing fierce resistance from the Council's elite guards. As they reached the control room, Lyra found herself standing before the Vorelian High Command, the last remnants of the Council's power. "What's left of your empire?" Lyra asked, her voice cold. The Vorelian leader, a once proud figure, sneered. "You think you've won? Even if you kill us, the galaxy will never be free. The Council is a force of nature. You can't stop it." Lyra raised her weapon, her eyes filled with fury and finality. "The galaxy isn't yours to control. It never was." With that, she fired, and the Vorelian leader crumpled to the floor. The doomsday device was disarmed, and the Vorelian Empire crumbled in that moment. The rebellion had succeeded. The Council was no more. But as Lyra stood over the ruins of their former oppressors, she could feel the weight of the sacrifice. Earth was gone, the rebellion had cost countless lives, and the galaxy was left in turmoil. But for the first time in millennia, humanity had a chance at something more than vengeance. They had a chance at rebirth. Lyra turned to her comrades, her heart heavy but resolute. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We rebuild now, together." The stars that once marked the edge of humanity's darkness now became the beacons of hope. The rebellion had won, but a new chapter awaited. The future of the galaxy was in their hands.